This is Reverend Dick. Today, we're gonna have another look at what happens when people decide that it's a great idea to deal with the decrease of young people in a country that is modern, a very, what do you call it, progressive, very Swedish, when they decide to replace themselves with people from incompatible cultures and nations. So, what do we have today? I'm gonna fucking show you right here. Kristianstad residents warn of decay. Many people are thinking about moving. The insecurity in central Kristianstad in Skåne is now so obvious that local profiles threaten to start a new party to make their city safe again. Many people also want to move, it is called. Kristianstad in northeastern Skåne is a changing city. In recent years, the city center has become increasingly unsafe. 3 weeks ago, a bomb exploded at a pizzeria in Söder. Last Monday, a newspaper delivery man was kidnapped in the middle of the night and tortured by a suspect offender from Syria. There have also been several notable robberies, a bloody knife attack at Pressbyrån, people who tried to kill each other by car, etc. Previously, the city has had special so-called problem areas, Charlottesborg, Näsby and Österäng, where the majority of residents are immigrants, but in recent years the problem has spread to the center. Swedes also feels more and more displaced. Since the asylum wave in 2015, new arrivals have received housing in almost all parts of central Kristianstad, which is why it is speculated that even the central parts of the city will now be segregated. At the same time, a dozen Turk shops, as they are called locally, have been established in the middle of the city, even in areas that were previously typically Swedish. Last year, a kiosk was robbed at Fästninggatan on Östermalm against a completely different store the police had made. A blow since selling liquor under the counter, and in another, drugs have been sold. Several of the shops are open late, even at night, and gangs gather around them. The city is also changing by the fact that the downtown stores are again barring due to the lack of customers. Basically, this is a bad translation by Google Translate. Already in April last year, some 20 stores in central Kristianstad has closed down. It's starting to look more and more like a ghost town. Feels like the center can die completely, it was called in the local newspaper a few days ago. Last week, H&M announced that it was closing its stores at the Little Square. It is one of the largest and most popular stores and something of a hub for many of Kristianstad's residents, especially women. At the same time, well-known Royal Design announced that it is also closing down and selling out everything. Galleria Boulevard, which opened in the late 2013 and replaced the classic Domus building on the East Boulevard, became a flop. It was initially aroused, but even there, shop after shop has had to close again. Half of the building, which covers large parts of the city center in its entirety and contains a parking garage made for a big city, has always been empty since no one wanted or could afford the high rents. The city is in total disrepair, says Kristianstad residents to Fria Tider, and that has happened in a few years. The situation is so acute that 8 local profiles today are published in a debate article in the local newspaper where they propose 10 points to save the city. We are many who are tired of the development in Kristianstad city, and it has gone so far that many of us are thinking and even planning to move away from the city due to the sad development that has been happening during the last 24 months. Among other things, they want politicians to recognize the crisis situation and employ more security guards around the clock in the city center as well as Näsby and Charlottesborg. The article authors also point out that the drug trade is a major problem. Likewise, they want to shrink the disputed bathhouse move, where the town's bathhouse is planned to be demolished and moved out to Näsby until it has become some resemblance of order in the city again, and the drugs have disappeared. If nothing is done in 2019, the profiles threaten to start a new political party to get Kristianstad safe again. In another article, the Liberal councillor Pierre Monson has been given a chance to respond. The insecurity is linked to the unauthorized driving on the pedestrian streets in the city center, and it is generated by the increased drug sales. No shit, Sherlock. The drug is basically the only problem. We have to take back the pedestrian streets, and there the police will play an important role, he says to Kristianstad Bladet, and demand a targeted police investigation in the center. Which leads us to a strong increase in bombings. Google Translate decides to use the word explosions by some form, but what they mean are bombings. I will include the links and you can have a look at the Swedish words and compare it to the translation that Google does. So, Dagens Nyheter reports that the number of explosions in Sweden is increasing. Between January and July this year, 120 explosions occurred compared to 83 last year, according to police statistics. Thus, during the first half of the year, the explosions increased by 45% compared with the corresponding period last year. According to Dagens Nyheter, the increase is taking place throughout the country except in the central region. Most of the explosions occur in the south region, and then mainly in Skåne. We can only really speculate on why at the moment. We have an increased problem with crime and exclusion, says Petra Stenkula, who is investigative director at the police in the region south. What do you mean you can only really speculate? It is fucking criminal gangs that mainly consist of foreign criminals. It's very easy. You can ask basically any Swede with their head on straight and you will get the right answer. During the whole of last year, a total of 157 explosions occurred in the country. In previous years, the police have not released aggregate statistics on explosive acts. However, there are figures that show that the National Forensic Center did more than twice as many explosives since 2018 as 2013. Which leads us to something that's even more fun for the Swedes. So, basically, even smaller municipalities have to be prepared for terrorist attacks. Not only large cities, but also smaller municipalities are wise in preparing for them to suffer terrorist acts. This is stated by the MSB after the police averted a suspected terrorist act in Östersund last week. An Uzbek man was arrested on Friday on suspicion of probable cause for an attempted terrorist offense. He was arrested on Wednesday at the Big Square in Östersund after people warned that he had driven a Volvo 855 in a suspicious manner. In the man's car were found items that have led the prosecutor to suspect that he was preparing a terrorist act. Now, P4 Värmland reports that MSB is also calling on smaller municipalities to have preparedness for terrorist attacks. Jonas Eriksson, function manager for public safety at the authority, explains what the municipalities can do. First of all, you have to be aware that this can actually happen even in smaller cities such as Karlstad. Then you probably need to think and analyze what is in the municipality that is more vulnerable or sensitive. Sites, facilities, or buildings for that matter as well. When you have done this, you should consider what safeguards to implement, says Jonas Eriksson's the P4 Värmland. Isn't it great what we have to suffer through due to the incessant fucking virtue signaling by our piece of shit politicians? Now this is what happens when a population is disarmed. This is what happens when you implement tax after tax after tax on an unarmed population that has no way or no will to defend themselves. This is what happens when you hand over to the state the responsibility to raise and educate your children. They will indoctrinate your children with a common core value that you need to keep your entire life in order to be considered a Swede by the government. Sweden mentality. Never disarm. Never give up your children to the state. And make sure that you defend yourself, your lives, and that you close the borders in your country as soon as fucking possible to avert a disaster as the one that we had in Sweden. This has been Reverend Dick. Please like the video, share it, and why not even subscribe to the channel. Down below in the description you will find links to the articles and also links to the social media that I'm engaged in right now. Until later, have a good one. This has been Reverend Dick. Bye bye.